This time of the year, which is in the springtime, the month of March and running into April, is I like to make maple syrup. Probably a little unique that I actually like the month of March. Most people don't like it because it's a transition from winter to spring and it's kind of muddy and yucky and the weather changes. But that's exactly what you need to make maple syrup. I started in the maple syrup business when I was old enough to walk, I guess. My grandfather used to make maple syrup in the Catskills where I grew up. He was a dairy farmer, and my father used to help run shifts in boiling sap in the sap house. So myself and my siblings would go down and we'd sleep in cardboard boxes at night while he's boiling next to the hearth. I start in the month of January after the holidays. I go up into the sugar bush and walk around there to make sure that all my lines from the tubing is still intact, and also to make sure that the lines that go from the from the main lines to the tree itself are not laying in the snow and covered up. And then about the middle of February I start tapping, and I tap with a 5/16" drill. I used to use a abrasive bit, and nowadays I'm using a battery-powered drill. You drill it in about 3/4 of an inch, and then when you start tapping the trees, especially with the tubing, you just take the leader from the main line to the tree, kind of unhook that, take it up, put a new tap in, you tap it in with a hammer very gently, and so you do that with all of about 400 taps. And then I also have 70 buckets that I put up also, and use metal taps instead of plastic taps for them. And the sap that comes out of the trees looks like water. If you taste it, it has just like a little hint of sweetness to it. And the sugar content, at least in my trees, varies from about 2.7 to 1.7% sugar. Maple syrup is at 66% sugar, so it takes around 50 to 70 gallons of sap to make a gallon of maple syrup. So that means I have a lot of water to boil out of the sap. Sap comes into the sap house. I have a 300-gallon elevated tank that the sap flows into, and then I have piping that goes from the tank to the evaporator. In the middle of the evaporator it has a float mechanism so you can control the level of sap in the evaporator. The evaporator is 3 feet wide and 8 feet long. It's got flues in the back pans, the back 4 feet. It's very similar to the style and looks of the evaporator that my grandfather had 80 years ago. So there are other folks that are using new technology, but I prefer to stick with the older technology, and also I use wood to fire the firebox up. As the sap flows through the different cells in the evaporator, as it gets closer to the section where you draw off the syrup, it gets closer and closer to maple syrup. When the last cell is ready to draw off, I use a hydrometer, and when it's at 32 degrees Baume, then you know that you're at maple syrup. So I bottle mostly pints and quarts, plastic. This year I've experimented with a variety of glass containers. I don't think I'd use the word old-fashioned, but I kind of like just doing it the traditional way. I have a lot of friends that are aware that I make maple syrup, and they like to come up to the sap house, and if they do, and I get a little bit of work out of them, not that I ask for very much, then I treat them to pancakes, hard-boiled eggs, and I've even cooked hot dogs in the evaporator. I guess my favorite part of making maple syrup is seeing the reactions from people when I serve maple syrup either at the sap house with the pancakes or um, when I give it to different people as gifts. I give most of it away as gifts. But absolutely a labor of love. But I think I tell people it's in my blood. You know, my grandfather made maple syrup. I've been making it since I was 12 in a fairly sizable way. And so it's just kind of part of, maybe it's that transition from winter to summer. Through that, what most people think is the yuckiest month of the year, of the March, at least up in the Northeast. And like I tell people, I love it. It's great.